Good afternoon. Welcome. Welcome to our Liquid Lowdown. I am going to get us kicked off here. For those I haven't had an opportunity to meet, my name is Emily Massaro. I get to serve as the Vice President of Marketing here at digital marketing agency Liquid. Also joining me is our Executive Vice President, Brett Ludlow.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining. We're excited to share this presentation with you today.
Thank you. Great. Yeah, I'm glad to be here today to give you the Liquid Lowdown on zero-click marketing and what that means as we look ahead to 2026. Please feel free to use the chat to post any questions you may have as we go along, and we'll see what we've got time for at the end. I believe that's the only housekeeping item, though. So with that, we'll jump in. I want to get started with some stage setting. So clicks used to mean progress, a visitor, and then maybe even a lead or a sale. But today, thanks to Google AI overviews, social media algorithms, even influencer strategies, people are consuming and maybe even deciding and acting without clicking. Now, it doesn't mean they aren't engaging. It just means the engagement looks a little different. This is what we mean when we talk about zero-click marketing. And I'm excited to dive into exactly that today. So first, a quick look at where we're headed with our time together. And dive a little bit more into the concept of zero-click. Then I want to talk about attribution, at which point we've also got to dig into this whole mindset of brand versus performance and how that all fits in. Then with that in mind, we'll talk about how to newly approach some of the core digital marketing channels. I also want to take a minute to calm any anxieties you may have about your website and web analytics no longer being important when we're talking about zero-click. And then we're going to end talking about planning, budgeting, and discussing with stakeholders zero-click marketing. So why does this matter now? Because zero-click isn't a trend, it's the new default. And we're seeing this across platforms. Google serves AI answers instead of organic links. TikTok answers your question inside the video. LinkedIn carousels educate without linking out. And influencers incorporate brands and products organically within their typical style content without a swipe up or click the link in my bio CTA. As you likely know, this shift is being accelerated by AI and machine learning, which are fundamentally changing how people consume content. The platforms themselves are incentivizing users to stay put, and AI is making it easier for them to get what they need without ever clicking. So if we dive a little deeper into this, with search, it's summaries over site visits. So in the past, search engines like Google were designed to send people outward towards websites. Now, features like Google's AI overviews summarize answers directly in the search results, and LLMs like ChatGPT or Perplexity are almost acting as decision makers in a way, the way that they're prompting people. So the impact is that users get what they need without ever leaving the platform. We're actually at a point where 60% of Google searches end without a click. So even if your content powers the answers, you might not see that traffic. On social platforms, we're seeing the same thing with a slightly different strategy in that algorithms reward content that keeps users in-app, with platforms like TikTok and Instagram recently sharing they now track average watch time. So in short, machine learning optimizes for time spent and not necessarily those link clicks. The implication is that if your approach relies on click here to learn more, you're in a way competing against the algorithm itself. So this is where the challenge really begins. When engagement happens inside Google results or inside a TikTok video, your analytics can feel like a dead end. And that brings us to one of the biggest questions that marketers are facing. What does this mean for attribution? I want to talk about the attribution trap. This is where many marketers get stuck. When we can't track a clear journey, it's easy to assume our efforts aren't working. And frankly, this isn't new. I'm willing to bet that at some point in your marketing career, you considered some type of weighted attribution model because you recognized your buyer's journey wasn't as linear as see ad, click, buy. And as a consumer, I'm sure you can attest to this as well in your business and personal purchasing. Maybe aside from that Instagram ad that got you at a moment of weakness. What's happening is that audiences are engaging on their terms, so on their preferred platforms and at their own pace. Think of someone who sees your brand mentioned in an influencer story, then maybe mentioned in a Reddit thread, and then Googles your brand a week later. Maybe by the time they actually make it to your site to take some kind of action, they go directly. That path isn't going to show up in your CRM, but it's real. So if you're only focused on what you can measure, you'll underinvest in what actually creates momentum. Which brings us to one of the biggest mindset shifts that marketers will need to make, and that's how we think about brand and performance. So why it's positioned brand versus performance always perplexes us, because that binary doesn't really hold up. If a strong brand presence is not already established, users are less likely to search for or trust your product later. Performance tactics then fail if brand awareness and consideration aren't already there to support them. This is especially true in the zero-click world. Performance marketing depends on measurable actions, clicks, conversions, journeys you can track. But when platforms like TikTok, Google, Reddit are increasingly not rewarding clicks or even showing you that data, performance marketing loses both visibility and trackability. That's where brand marketing steps in, though. It builds recognition and preference, even if no one clicks. So campaign effectiveness is no longer just about conversion rates. It's about impressions plus how well those impressions embed your message, frequency plus how consistently users encounter your brand across channels, and storytelling and resonance. So crafting stories and experiences that are engaging and exciting, but that also stick with people. So in other words, brand creates the conditions for performance to succeed, and performance activates the demand that brand builds. So they're not necessarily separate. I'd say they're inseparable. When you think about it this way, you start to see where every channel might need to work a little bit differently. So let's talk about zero-click marketing for this zero-click behavior. How are we approaching each channel? Let's start with paid media. So you have to show up strong even if no one clicks. So the play here is offering value in the view, aiming to be remembered even though you might not get that click. So let's say you're promoting a white paper. Instead of just download now, picture an ad that summarizes 3 key takeaways in the creative itself. So even if no one clicks, they walk away informed and that impression sticks. So in this case, we're shifting from optimizing for conversions to planning from the get-go for visibility and embedded value. How about with organic social content? Again, we want to think platform native and trying to establish trust. So consider a carousel post and maybe it's 4 mistakes to avoid, and you can finish that title based on your own brand. So that offers enough insight that someone might screenshot it and share it with their team, no click necessary, but your brand is now part of that internal conversation. Today's organic social isn't about teasing people to click. Here too, it's about delivering value right there in the view. You're probably starting to see a little bit of a trend here. Same goes with influencers. Their audience doesn't need to click, they just need to remember. This means building zero-click content into your influencer briefs. So you're going to ask influencers to answer FAQs natively in the post. Let them demo the value of your product or service, or collaborate on more story-driven content with brand mentions baked in that aren't too focused on prompting a link. And lastly, how about organic search? Here is yet another example, if you really needed one more, of where visibility matters even when there's no click. You need to be considering how your brand is showing up in AI responses, summaries, and snippets, not just those traditional SERPs you've historically been focused on. So SEO strategies are really now overlapping with brand, PR, and even social strategies focused on brand building, maybe building content strategies that prioritize original, expert-level content, and then expanding your scope beyond your website to ensure you're everywhere your audience is searching. Of course, that's going to mean LLMs, but also we're thinking about Reddit, TikTok. As a quick plug, if you're interested in more on SEO in the age of AI, we've got a great article at the top of Liquid's blog, as well as a recorded webinar on our YouTube channel. So you be sure to check those out. So all of this said, this doesn't mean traffic is dead or your website doesn't matter. I'm here to say it's more important than ever. So when someone moves from zero-click engagement to actual interest, your website needs to confirm and convert. Our focus with clients is on web experiences that pick up right where that zero-click content leaves off. So ensuring there's consistent messaging, the CTAs are clear, there's speed in finding what people are looking for, etc. And that importance spans to your website-related metrics. For instance, branded search as a proxy for interest. So you may not know exactly where someone saw you, but branded search lift and direct traffic spikes can both be real indicators. And we can also look at behavioral patterns over attribution. So look beyond conversions and think about patterns like page flow, time on site, repeat visits, or just general content consumption trends. That's going to tell us who's showing intent, even if they didn't click from a campaign. How do we translate this into our 2026 planning? Let me get you started. So we're going to rethink attribution, which is going to mean shifting KPIs and planning for more embedded value. So when we talk about rethinking attribution, we want to maybe think about treating attribution as just one lens and not the whole picture. I'm not here to say throw out your analytics, far from that. Attribution is still a really helpful diagnostic tool. However, in the zero-click world, in a way, it's just one perspective. Not everything that drives impact is going to show up in your last click attribution model, and that's okay. We also want to shift KPIs from clicks to impact signals. So think branded search volume, engagement depth, so saves, shares, watch time, influencer response quality, and then maybe even social or LLM mentions and sentiment. All of these are signs that your brand is present and persuasive. And lastly, budgeting for embedded value. We want to invest in content and campaigns that perform within the feed and not just on the landing page. So budget for video, real value added paid and organic social content, influencer partnerships, and really just not only that bottom of funnel, kind of get that conversion type tactics. Another important element of 2026 planning is talking about zero-click marketing with non-marketers. I know each one of you just maybe had someone pop in your head. Let's do a little role play with some questions you might be asked. Where's the ROI if no one clicks? Well, we know that visibility can create demand. Zero-click touch points drive branded search, trust, and recall, even if they don't show up in attribution tools, making them critical to plan for. Why aren't we seeing more conversions from this? Because the journey is now more longer and more layered. So we're optimizing for influence upstream so that when buyers are ready, they choose us. So this is just brand marketing, right? It's integrated. Brands lay the foundation and the performance activates it. So in a zero-click environment, the two are inseparable. If we can't measure it, why do it? Let me stop you there. We can measure leading indicators like engagement, branded search lift, sentiment, and then connect them to some long-term outcomes. What's the goal then? To be remembered, trusted, and chosen, especially when there's no direct click path. The click is the byproduct, but not necessarily the goal. All right, now, if you'll humor me, I want to start applying some of what we discussed. So grab your notebook and pen, or just use your imagination. I want you to think about one key campaign that you're planning for next year. Do you have a product launch? Are you planning a brand push? Maybe there's a specific industry you're targeting. Maybe you're even allocating some budget for recruitment or more generally employer brand marketing. Okay, if you've got something in mind, I want you to also briefly consider this campaign's goals and audience. Okay, now related to this, I have a few questions. First is, which platforms will likely be zero-click environments for this specific campaign's audience? Where does your audience already spend their time? Are they heavy LinkedIn users, active on Instagram or TikTok? They're relying on Google for answers? And then which of these platforms you're thinking about are designed to keep people inside rather than drive traffic out? The channels you're picturing are truly where your audience is consuming content and starting to form decisions. They've got to have a home in your 2026 plan. All right, next, let's think about measurement. What KPIs could you track to measure influence before clicks? If you can't measure traditional conversions, what leading indicators might tell you your message is resonating? Maybe branded search volume, post saves or shares, video watch time, maybe shifts in sentiment, and like we talked about a little bit earlier, even direct traffic spikes. Which of these feel relevant for your campaign? Remember, in a zero-click world, these signals are just as important and sometimes even more so than that last click conversion. And then finally, what kind of value can you embed directly into your campaign content so that someone walks away with something, even if they never click? Could you create a LinkedIn carousel that answers common question right there in the feed? Could a TikTok tutorial teach your audience something useful with your brand naturally woven in? Could your ad creative summarize some key insights or maybe steps in a process so viewers leave informed without clicking through? Think of this as your way of giving before you get, delivering value up front to build trust and recall. All right, if you indulge me there, my hope is that you've now got a starting point to discuss with your team as far as how zero-click marketing fits into next year's strategy. To continue expanding on that, we've actually created a zero-click marketing planning guide, and we're sharing that with webinar attendees. So if you're not sure how to adjust your 2026 plans to encompass everything we're talking about this afternoon, this guide's going to hopefully have some of your answers. So it's got some of that role playing we ran through, some checklists, and a little bit more. So look for that in a follow-up from the Liquid team. All right. So in short, it's a zero-click world and we're just living in it. And the result is that the click is no longer the goal. It's the byproduct of great strategy. So if you remember nothing else from today, the journey doesn't always start on your website. Your audience is making decisions long before they land on your site, on social, in search results, and more. So your strategy needs to meet them wherever that journey begins. Strategy is evolving. Measurement should too. We need to track leading indicators in 2026 to get a clearer picture of what's influencing. Visibility has value even without the click. So every impression, watch, or share builds that trust and recall. And so being consistently present can create momentum that's going to pay off when buyers are ready to act. And if you weren't already your brand's biggest advocate, now's the time. Brand building is no longer optional. It's really going to be the foundation of what makes performance marketing work. And so the stronger your brand presence, the more likely audiences are to choose you when it matters most. So hopefully, I prep you to lead the charge on this internally, educating stakeholders on why zero-click marketing really matters, and championing that investment in upstream channels and content. So thank you so much for your time, and happy 2026 planning.